Better than happy. I've been thinking recently about the very idea of happiness. I looked up happiness online and it said that happiness is a sense of well-being. And I realized how much our happiness is dependent on circumstances. I feel well, I'm happy if my circumstances are going well. That is, my job is working out well, my relationship with my wife is well, my relationship with my kids are well, I'm healthy. Then I'm happy, and how much my happiness is based on the way that my circumstances are. Happiness also has the idea of being fortunate. Again, that points to our circumstances, that I am very fortunate, and therefore I have a reason to be happy, but I need to be more than just happy, and that's what I want to talk about today. The idea that in our lives cannot be just about happiness, where our circumstances are working out, everything's okay, and therefore I'm happy. That's great if we have that, but we need to be more than happy. We need to be joyful. Hey, if you're encouraged by the content, I would ask you to subscribe to the channel and share this video with somebody right now. Thanks. I was looking at Philippians, and Paul, though he is in prison, writes over and over about rejoicing. He says, I rejoice in the Lord. It's even a command. He says in chapter 4, rejoice in the Lord, and again I say it, rejoice. That's interesting. We can choose to rejoice, that is to have joy. It's not something based on circumstances. It's not based on a feeling. It's a choice that we make to find our joy in the Lord specifically, not in our work, not in our health, not in our circumstances. So you can find yourself happy, and that's great, but we need to pursue joy, our joy in the Lord. So what does that mean? What does it mean to rejoice or have our joy in the Lord? Well, it means that we focus not on any of these other things, but on who God is. That's the first thing. When I stop thinking about my circumstances and I begin to read in the Word and think about who God is, that brings me joy. To think about the qualities that God has, that God is loving, that God is kind, that God is in control of my life, that God has a purpose for the events in my life, that begins to move me out of happiness and into joy. I can rest in that. That's why Paul wrote in prison to rejoice. Because his eyes were not just on his circumstances, but they were on his God and how faithful and how loving and how good his God was. And that means that regardless of what's going on, when I have my eyes fixed on God and who He is, then I can have joy no matter what my circumstances. I think the second part of joy is not only focusing on God, but focusing on all that God has done and all that God will do. It's amazing if you take some time and you begin to think about in your life the way that you have seen God as faithful in the past, the way that He's provided for you, the way that He's at times protected you. That can bring that sense of joy and rejoicing in our life. When we remember all of God's faithfulness and especially His deliverance, when I think about the cross and the fact that Jesus Christ died for me and I have a secure place in heaven, not because of what I've done or who I am, but because I received that gift of salvation in Christ. That's a cause for rejoicing. That's something that no circumstances, no trial, no difficulty can ever take away because I'm secure in Christ. That's part of that rejoicing. When you decide in your heart and your mind that you're not going to be fluctuating in your emotions and your happiness, when your situation's good, great, you can be happy, that's great. But whether your situation is good or whether it's hard, the challenge for you and me is to begin to focus on joy and rejoicing. And that means I need to make a decision of where I'm going to set my attention, where I'm going to set my focus. Is it on my circumstances, or it is on how great God is, how good He is, how much He has done for me in the past, and also what He's going to do for me in the future. In 1 Peter chapter 1, the Apostle Peter writes to Christians who are under persecution, and he says that they have a joy inexpressible and full of glory. I love that, because what Peter's saying is that because of their relationship with Christ, even though they're facing difficulty, they can have that joy because of what they have a hope for in the future, what they anticipate that will stir them and help them to see and understand that I'm going through hardships now. There's heartache in my life, but I have joy because of God's faithfulness and who He is, because of what God's done in the past and because of what I face in the future because I'm a child of God. So my encouragement to you is, if you're in a hard time, don't look at circumstances. Go beyond happiness and enter into joy by focusing on who God is, what God has done in His faithfulness, and what God will do because of Jesus Christ. God bless you and have a great day.